Okay, everybody. I had to reset everything. Every little thing that I did. I thought I was like all kind of like whatever. Let me know if you can hear me. According to my microphone, you can hear me. I don't know if we're in house. Yeah. Yeah, we've got it all kind of okay now. Listen, if Elon Musk can have trouble getting his stuff up and running, I can get my. I don't own this stuff. Oh my gosh. Jeanette, good to see you. Deborah. Rita, how are you? Janet. Stephanie, how are you? Judith, Adrian, hope you guys are hanging out. Thanks so much for this. Boy, oh boy, it was just one of those things. For whatever reason, it was. Yeah, I should have fixed my camera. That's what I should have done. But that's okay. Hold on. Hi, how are you? Got the love sign up behind me. Be great if somebody turned on the air conditioning because it's 1,000 degrees in here all of a sudden, and I'm slightly tilted. Which way am I tilted? Am I tilted like this? I'm starting to get the Sam Elliott hair. I can kind of start to pull my hair back like this. So eat the great white whale. Here we go. Hi, Colleen. How are you? Laura, good to see you. All right, guys. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the political roundup because, I don't know if you guys have picked up on this, but if you were in the Shuffle Up and Heal the other night, first of all, welcome back. Hope you told a friend. We did some pretty amazing and cool connections. Hope we were able to kind of like connect the dots a little bit. But I kind of avoided politics a little bit. I might have made a side comment or two. I can't help it. I am a Pisces. I am a Mercury in Pisces. I am going to be slightly I'm going to be mean sometimes. And then, why not do a regular show on the regular just about politics? And listen, if you want to tune in, you can tune in. If you don't want to tune in, you don't have to tune in. Right? So, it's the way it kind of rolls. So we're going to talk some politics here tonight. And we're going to, oh, yep, everybody, buddies. Yeah, there it is. We're going to have a great show, though, because I'm fully prepared or whatever that means, right? We're going to have a good time with it. We are going to do some cards, too. We're going to do some cards on top of this, but we're going to save that for the end. I got my cards. So what we're going to take a look at here today is we're going to take a look at what's going on in the political world. Now, there's been a lot of change in just a month. I mean, it was a month ago that somebody took a shot at Donald Trump. It was a month ago that an innocent spectator passed away at one of his rallies. It was a month ago where Joe Biden was denouncing violence, and we were all still just like, yeah, well, does he know what day it is? And then he went through the RNC. They announced JD Vance. By the way, you can check out those videos. I have a in terms of how they would approach things, how they would go about things. And if, Donald were to say attack, JD Vance would call them all sorts of names at one time. But, times change, things go, whatever. Right. Oh, yeah. Cheryl, totally a Mercury retrograde. Carolyn, put your hand, get them on 10 and 2. And I'm glad you looked that up. Also, when we take a look at politics, I fully own. I'm going to give you my political history. That's okay. Hey, Lady Ann, you're not late. I am. So, what's going on with that? So, I own my political stances. I really do. And listen, if I ever change my political stances, it's because I gain more information. I don't inherently think that it's a bad thing to change your mind. I don't think it's a bad thing if you collect more information and you're like, just like, you meet somebody and you're like, hey, they're okay. And then you're like, I just saw them kick a cat. They will never be okay in my book again. Okay. They're mean to a dog. No, no, not going to happen. They yell at their kids or they try and live through their kids. It's like, and then there's sliding scales. Like, did they mean to do it? Do they have the tools? You start to consider all of those things. But when you call somebody Hitler, you can't walk that back. That's just my take on why the JD Vance thing just is so odd to me. Like it just perpetuates the same thing over and over again. We are going to take a look at Kamala Harris and Tim Wells. We're going to take a look, Tim Walz rather. We're going to take a look at why he is the candidate that he is for her. We're also going to take a look at, ironically enough, the debacle on X, formerly known as Twitter, which, by the way, you haven't really changed your name if you still refer to your old name all the time, which is, by the way, part of the challenge that I have with transgenderism, is that they kind of hang on to well, it used to be Mike, but now I'm Margareta. And then you're like, okay, so which are you? Well, I'm Margareta, but I used to be Mike. I don't need to know that. Just what's your identity today? Because X sounds like an awful branding decision. And by the way, those of you that don't know it, he changed it because, you're like, oh, you go from Twitter to X. Like, what's your thing with that? Like, why do you decide that? And on one side of it, you're like, well, he owns a company called SpaceX, and, why didn't he call his car X? And why didn't he, all those other questions that come in. And the reason why he changed his company name was very simple. It was actually a political reason. It was something he can get Tucker Carlson on, because Tucker Carlson used to have a contract that said, you cannot go on Twitter if you leave here. And he said, okay. And then Elon Musk said, well, it's not Twitter anymore, it's X. So now you can come on. Ha ha! You outfoxed them. It's like, oh. But listen, you can change your mind. You can evaluate things and have more information come in, right? If he came out and he's never addressed it. He's never come right out and said, hey, I call him Hitler because a lot of his stuff is very kind of autocratic, and I didn't really appreciate that. But you know what? We've had a couple of conversations. I've been able to kind of, like, you can't walk it back, but you can walk it back. He made no attempt, which is the par for the course part of this. So when I was 18 years old, I was a registered Republican. I was kind of forced into it in a weird sort of way because it was a very Republican area, and the kids that were running the voting drive, the make sure you register to vote and blah, 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 filled it out. They kind of preformed the Republican part. And, shame on me for being like, but that's not what I wanted to do. And if I had cared about it a little bit differently, I might have argued it. This is before I graduated in 91. So I remember registering to vote about 3 or 4 months before the first Iraq skirmish, the Desert Storm, if you will, the whole, Kuwait thing and all that other jazz. And, staying in the Republican lane for literally 2 decades made a lot of sense to me. And it wasn't, I always disagreed with any of the stances on, social issues but I was also railing against politicians trying to dictate social issues. Like, I just thought it was like, it's none of your business. As I evolved in that, it became kind of a feather in my cap to say things like, well, I really support gay marriage, but I'm a registered Republican, just to let you know. Like, there was clout in those statements, there's clout in those moments. And one of the arguments that I always kind of heard was that, the people that were, and that's when the whole rhino thing was breaking out. And it's like, you weren't really a Republican. You were just kind of tea parties and all that other shit. Like, if you're a historian and you pay attention to history, politics, Republicans in particular, have been searching for their identity pre-Lincoln. It's the Republicans that freed the slaves. Well, okay, it wasn't. It was Abraham Lincoln, and it was a shady deal in the middle of the night, and he chose to free slaves as opposed to emancipate and give claim and land to Native Americans. So he basically signed their death warrant while he let African American slaves, or at least the right to own slaves, be abolished. He actually didn't give any rights to African Americans, aside from the idea of freedom, which is huge. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to underplay it, but it still took us another 100 years and civil rights movements and things like this. And when I changed affiliations, I changed to Democrat for a hot minute because in my town we had a dipshit running for mayor. He was someone that was, stop me if you've heard this before. He got into office. He manipulated and corrupted things. He had a couple of shady shit people around him who, by the way, were generally good people until he got a hold of them, and went ahead and manipulated them to write him personal checks. And they went on cruises and all that stuff, right? Hey, Lynn brought up a great question. Do I think he's still leaving the country? 100%. And I'm going to show it to you. That man is not going to stay in the United States. Right? You know, he's somebody that's ticked off the cartel, just to let you know. So anyways, I digress. So in my own political, journey, I was a Democrat for a hot minute because I wanted in my city, it is heavily Democrat. Like, the Democratic primary is the election. We haven't had a Republican candidate or a third party candidate from the start of it, from forever. Good, bad, or indifferent. And by the way, I was raised at a Democrat dinner table, citizens dinner table, really. And for me, I wanted to vote in that. That's what was important to me. What's my party affiliation? Well, I don't want to. No, I had a voice. I wanted to say it. I registered. I got my vote in. The person that I voted for did not win, but he was the person that I was supporting. Actually, did end up in City Hall. He actually has a prominent position, and it was the smartest thing they could have done. And I mean, this was like the person. This person kind of goes away. I think that eventually, I'm going to save this for the end, but I think the part that you have to understand about Donald Trump is that the chickens are coming to roost. And you can take a swing at Kamala Harris. You can take a look at Tim Walz and how he managed COVID. I got a boatload of questions about that. I've got a boatload of questions about how how things are kind of playing. And I'm watching Trump supporters sully in such a way that it's not even logical. It's like, well, Kamala, if you were going to make these changes, what were you doing for the last 4 years? She was the vice president. She was not the president. She is a policy enforcer. She is not a policy maker. Well, our oil prices are so high now. Our oil prices are high because there is a war in Ukraine, and the Saudi government, along with the Syrian government, along with the Iranian government, have a cartel. And those of you that aren't sure of what a cartel is, it is a monopoly over in collusion over prices, such as things like, say, you could have a cartel on, say, drugs. So then you set the price on the drugs so you make your money. In this case, it's about oil, everybody. What did Joseph Robin and Biden do? He went ahead and started drill, baby, drill. He has been drilling since the day he got in office. We have had an increase. We have produced more oil in 3 years than, and by the way, I don't fully support this, just to let you know, but we have drilled the shit out of our in-ground reserves. We've done it through fracking, which environmentally, it's like, okay, what are we doing here? And we have dug deeper than we ever have before. And yet we're sitting here saying, well, I did that. Yeah, he kept it under $4 a gallon. Yeah, he has been pumping that in because OPEC was jamming us, absolutely jamming us, because they wanted us to get into a fight with Russia. Do you know why they wanted us to get into a fight with Russia? So that then we would have a war, if not a proxy war, but a full-on war with Russia, so they could produce all the oil, because the next leading producers of oil are the United States and Russia. So this way they would just create a monopoly. Let those two fight. The cartel is the reason why the gas prices are what they are. Oh, and by the way, we're coming out of a pandemic when we weren't really going anywhere. That's why they were $2 a gallon, guys. Like, it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to do this, but to watch the effects and to watch the attacks, just like, I don't really think that it's fair to go after JD Vance for, the idea that he's changed his name 3 times. I understand 2 of the names. Now, the last one was a little sus, but when you go through this, you have the right to defend who you are. You have the right to decide who you are and who you present. I just don't think that it's time well spent. It's not good energy. So I hope when you guys understand when I talk about politics, I actually approach it from the idea of energy. We waste our time on nonsense, and it is a fear-based creation, which, by the way, Donald Trump has absolutely mastered. He has absolutely mastered. And listen, the last defense that maybe the Democrats have had is, but don't you see what this guy's going to do? And the Project 2025 is just absurdly scary. And it has lost a lot of gusto in the last couple of weeks, if not months. He has kind of denounced it, but the evidence kind of speaks contrary to it, since half of his administration helped write it. It just, there's a lot of questions here. But at the end of the day, can we just simply ask ourselves in a vacuum, before we even look at the astrology, if I told you that there was a candidate that was convicted of assault in a sexual nature, and then had another incident where he covered up another bad behavior, again, behavior of adults, it's your own sliding scale, and then, and by the way, I was somebody that when Monica Lewinsky happened, I kind of went, okay, well, don't you see the moral contention to it? I do, but that's not really his job. Can we get back to NAFTA and talk about why that didn't work? Like, these distractions were a challenge, but to tell you in a vacuum that there is a person that has no experience politically, has these issues with convictions and accusals and fraud and history of fraud and unsuccesses, up against someone who circumvented an entire primary process, that chose somebody as a running mate that shut down the state and was responsible for the largest riot in the country in the last 25 years, or at least was the governor during it. And ironically, Tim Walz was praised by Donald Trump for handling it as well as he did. So what are you going to do with that? I have relatives, and by the way, I'm going to be in the great state of Minnesota. It is so funny. I'm going to draw a map at some point, because on the day that Trump was handed his subpoena, I was in West Palm Beach. It's insane. He had to answer it. I was flying back. Now I'm going to Minnesota. Like, there were like 4 or 5 things where my trips were related to, they, when I was in Memphis, right before I went to Memphis, they had struck down in Alabama. There were 3 states that took this, but they basically struck down a Freedom to Vote Act, where you couldn't be a write-in, you couldn't be whatever, and they gerrymandered some of the lines again. The manipulation on the right has been going on for a very long time, and the Democrats kind of keep doing I'm going to change policy to kind of adapt to it, to be your opposition, to be like, hey, here you go. But it's both seeped in. It's not solution based. The problem with politics now is that we're not solution based. We're not solution based. That's the problem with politics today. I don't give a shit if you're left or right here. What did you solve? The reason why we have an immigration issue is because we, the people, have a structure. We have a process in place to accept people into this country. And by the way, Mr. Trump, they're not coming from asylums. They're coming to seek asylum. You fucking idiot. If you have a process in place, you need to have that process run well. If you don't have that process run well, you have to fix the problem. The problem is that we don't have enough lawyers to take on enough of those cases, because it is not sexy law, it is roll up your sleeves and get your fingers dirty law. It is go ahead and read a statute, stand up for somebody who speaks a different language than you, because when you walk in, you don't got swag. You're not the slick lawyer. You're the only person that will talk to them in English. In many cases, I have spoken to Border Patrol officers. I have read them. They are fantastic people. They are struggling, and they are not struggling for the reasons of violence. They're struggling because they're watching families starve on the side of the road because they're like, what do we do with this? I've spoken to lawyers, INS lawyers, that know their shit cold, but they can't get in front of a judge because they don't have them. We have a systematic break. What does that benefit them? Well, it benefits somebody because you have these poor souls coming over going, we'll do anything to kind of help. But then when you're ready to take on 10 people and 100 show up, woo-oo. Now, your capacity could be 100. They're screaming we don't have the capacity. That's bullshit. We have tons of capacity. I'm not announcing my candidacy here, but what a great idea. What if we took immigrants that have a whatever skill? We need to kind of adapt them to the new life. And by the way, fuck you and your English like sovereignty. If you don't speak my language, get out of my country. I have been in 7 states in the past year and a half. And I will tell you that there is a dialect in every single one of them that sounds like a different language. You know what I'm saying? Well, listen there, you just get up right up there in a pappy and then we kind of speak English. Well, I was English. Just because you don't understand don't mean I ain't English. We are just so pompous and arrogant. Okay, ask them, slow it down. I'm sorry, I don't understand you. How are we going to do this? It's a moment of compassion. It's a moment of understanding who we are. And who the hell are you to sit there and go, yeah, put them in a cage and separate them, make it painful. And by the way, kiss my ass, Obama, for buying the cages. Kiss my ass, Trump, for putting them in it. Good job by you, Biden, by saying, no, we have to do something else. Still didn't find a solution. He was just expedient to the moment. Our energy, if we're worth our salt as light workers, and by the way, everybody tuning into this, you've labeled yourself as light workers. I got a little something. I got a little intuition. I got a little of this. I appreciate that. I had a dream last night. We are so full of shit because we get wrapped up in the fear mongering of I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to lose my car. I'm going to live. And then we go about our business and then we're in survival mode. I'm not trying to detach from society. I'm trying to do it better so that I can actually help people. Right? Oh, by the way, I have a special announcement. One of the things that I've been looking at is how inflationary measures are just out of control. And I've done a deep dive on this. And by the way, those of you that don't know, I used to be a business analyst. I used to look at why companies were successful, what was missing, and that sort of thing. Inflationary cautions are perpetuated by several different things. Now, there's the things that the government can do, such as, change the Federal Reserve interest rates, being able to make or pump more money into the economy or less or whatever. And we really got out of whack during COVID. Right. And this is mutually exclusive to a Trump issue or a Biden issue. Just throw that shit out. The function of the Federal Reserve, although illegally built, and Woodrow Wilson will go back and change it if he could. And by the way, you history buffs just smiled at that one. But understanding that the money flow really matters. So that is what the government actually has control over in inflation. And then it's also how what it might influence into inflation numbers, such as taxes and tariffs, right? So you have those two pieces that the government actually touches. They have done a lot of work on taking off tariffs and changing tariffs and, taxes and whatever, right? Do you know what helps the inflationary measure is when they have a tax-free week at a in a state. Isn't that what's going on right now? There's a lot of dynamics into all of this, right? The part that actually really comes down in a capitalist society, and although we have socialistic measures, which is where those tariffs and that money printing and that control comes in, if we're going to grow it, we have to be able to delineate it to specialty, right? But then we have the shop owners. Then we have the business owners. Then we have the people that produce the goods. We have the people that own the factories. We have the people that make the shipping. We have the people that sell it at the front line. All of those things have a cost to it. The biggest cost currently affecting every single price you pay is profit. It is not salary. It is not transportation. It is not gasoline. It is not freight. It is not raw good materials. It is profit. And I don't mean to go all Robert Reich on everybody, but for the love of Pete, when are the people going to get smart enough to say, I'm not going to buy that anymore? I have bought 2 lunches this week. 2 lunches this week. Got a couple of subs, turkey and ham, not commodity based food here, right? A small thing of salad, a couple of drinks, $38. I'm not bitching. I'm not bitching because I can make it cheaper myself, and maybe that's what this is. But are you kidding me? 2 salads, nothing else. No drinks, no sidebars, no whatever, no extra dressing. $43. Paying 20 something a salad for fucking lettuce? It is and by the way, is it the restaurant? Could be. Could be. Could it be the supplier to the restaurant? Could be. Could be. Is it the supplier to the supply chain? Could be. Could be. Could it be all three? Ding, ding, ding. I am not anti-capitalism, but I am anti-gouging. One of the most impressive interviews I've seen all week, I highly encourage everybody to hear this. And it was Mark Cuban with Jon Stewart. And by the way, Jon Stewart is not where I get my news from. If I'm going to get it from anybody, it's probably going to be from Oliver, just to let you know. He kind of does a better job at that, and he's slightly dated, and he's well performed. But in this interview, Mark Cuban broke down, and by the way, he's one of 2 sharks I would have had to deal with. If I ever got on Shark Tank, the first thing I would have said to Kevin O'Leary is, I'm sorry, but you're out. That's a foolish game. Nope, I understand energy, and I know the only way that you tick is through that. I still ought to do my Shark Tank realization charts and take 6 or 7 of them. Herkovich is another one that I would probably say yes to. And if I had like a turnover tangible object, I probably would have said yes to Lori. That's about it, but only in that condition. But Mark Cuban, because he understood the bigger picture every single time. And by the way, when he said no, it wasn't an insult. If you ever notice, anytime he said no on Shark Tank, it was because he said, this just isn't a space I can help you in. He was very practical, very realistic in what he was saying and what he was doing. He was very content with saying no because he knew the risk that needed to go into it. He knew what you were going to need in order to be successful. He was smart enough to say, I don't know that. I don't know that. But what I can do is help you in this way. Right? I can help you in the ways that I can help you. And part of saying no might be part of how he helps them. But in this interview, he actually broke down what's going on with Tech Valley and all of the, tech bros and how they're protecting one another. And part of the reason why they're supporting Trump is because he is so vulnerable. If you go back and you look at any of the charts that I've done, I talk about his vulnerabilities more than his strengths. He has strengths, he just chooses not to use them. Now, he is literally, and listen, if they could get to him, it would be, his sons are going out there and basically saying, hey, listen, how much for your endorsement? How much for your whatever? And by the way, Kamala's side isn't clean either. For crying out loud, one of the first, donors that they got was from LinkedIn. Here's $10 million. Oh, by the way, get rid of your secretary of the FTC. She's no good and she's bad for business. Here's 10 million. It was so blatant. And by the way, Kamala didn't do anything wrong. She's just like, thank you for your donation. And they're like, yeah, get rid of the secretary of the FTC. By the way, the Federal Trade Commission is the one, and part of the reason why they want her gone is because she's looking at technology right now and saying, what are the things that we need to put into place so that then things like AI don't run rampant, so that then we don't lose our minds in this Bitcoin world of fake money. You guys do realize that the dollar, the only value of the dollar is that you believe in it. Sounds like a cardinal landing on the back porch, doesn't it? I'm okay with it, but I know a lot of other people that like things like proof and tangible things and gold bullions are out to dry on this one. Because Tech Valley companies and Bitcoin and there's like 15 other cryptocurrencies. I had it explained to me once about what open chain was and how it is that they make money. They basically make money on the money that's in there for the temporary time that it transfers to you. I don't know if you've paid a bill in the last couple of months, but when you pay a bill and then you open up your bank account, it's gone. It's gone. 2.2 seconds. You make a deposit though, it still takes 2 to 4 business days. Right? Two to 4 business days for you to get the money that you just held in your hand 2 minutes ago, even if it's cash. Well, we have to go through the depository and we have to. In other words, they have to create this inefficient process, which, by the way, steals your energy. Steals your energy. So all of these things and what Mark Cuban really kind of brought to a head, and he was and he talked about how he was Donald Trump being the business guy. And by the way, coming into this, my expectations, I didn't vote for him, but my expectations of him was that, and by the way, I could still have expectations of him and not vote for him because I'm a fucking grown up. Go figure that one. And, I don't have to have fealty and loyalty to someone to say, now go do your job. Imagine that. But my expectation and my hope was maybe he would get to the bottom of some of the collusion that was going on. Maybe he will raise his hand and say, the Kennedy assassination was not really fully disclosed. It says it was, but here's some other papers. 9/11, I found this whole thing about how gravity works and it doesn't match up. But instead he started selling his soul. And he slowly revealed himself. And it's in his chart. It's in everything I'm about to talk about. Oh, and by the way, those of you that were on Instagram, your time is up. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Instagram only does live videos for so long. So hope you guys make it over to Facebook or YouTube. Join the community over here. And by the way, if you guys found this by chance, like and subscribe. If you want to become a member, that always helps out on the back end of this, which is going to lead to a couple of announcements here. But one of the things that Mark Cuban kind of pushed, and this is my last thought on this, was the reason why I would have wanted him to run for some office, and Donald Trump was like, hey, why don't you join my cabinet, my administration? I need a tech advisor. I need to, maybe you can help us internally with, how to do it. And he said, Donald, I'm really honored, but, and in the back of his mind, he's like, this guy's shady as hell. He's like, I just didn't see a true, he was asking me for advice, but what he was really doing was angling like who I knew and whatever. And he was kind of an asshole. He would ask questions, but he wouldn't actually follow through. And that was his thing. He goes, a good businessman follows through, or comes back to you and say, hey, I hit a wall trying to do whatever it is that you were telling me to do, which is why I bailed on it, but I wanted to thank you for it. He's like, I never got that. And whether you're in the, tech bros or, the Shark Tank world and handshake and whatever. And he was really kind of sullied by that. So he distanced himself. But when he offered him the position, he said, you know what? I know who I am and I know what my priorities are. As much as it would be cool to work with the president of the United States, it would be cooler for me to see my kids grow up. You want to know why Mark Cuban's successful? He's got his shit together. He's got his priorities in line. He says things like, hey, here you go. By the way, I'm going to Minnesota next week to bring my dad, to bring my kids so then they can all meet that family. Priorities. Priorities. We're going to eat fair food. Hope we run into a governor. Listen, I'm biased. I like the guy's energy. I don't like all his decisions. I don't like all his politics. But I can still like him because I'm a fucking grown-up. We're going through this existential crisis right now because, quite frankly, we didn't know who we were. That's a problem, everybody. That's why when you look at the astrology of what I'm about to show you, you're going to sit back and go, what the hell? This is some real put up or shut up time, right? And I'm not even bringing into the idea of what the United States itself is going through. You have Pluto in retrograde, which, by the way, goes full into Capricorn again on September the 1st, 2024. We are about to see sparks fly. This little respite that astrology has given us here over the last couple of weeks, maybe not so much for Leo. Capricorn's been a little beat up. But let me tell you something. For the rest of us, for most of us, we've been a little chillaxing, right? Right? We've been a little astrology and chill. We're going to get thrown into the rabbit's den with this one. This one is going to be one of those times that if you personally have taken care of your stuff, you're going to go like, all right, well, I'm just going to know who I am. I'm just going to go and approach things the way that I should. I know who I am. When I came close to having the experience of a TV show and all this other stuff, when the writer's strike happened, I got 20 calls. 4 of them were offers. Brandon, how soon can you get cameras on you so we can get content going? Sorry, what? Yeah, so I'll send over the paperwork. We can talk about, the fees, your budget, what you're going to get paid. I'm like, I don't know. Why are you calling me now? Well, blah, blah, blah. And I put 2 and 2 together. There was a writer's strike going on. And once it hit me, I said, I'm going to politely say no. Because you're trying to take advantage of creatives and take away their, and by the way, they were raging against AI. They were raging against things like residuals. They were raging against things like union pay. I mean, the idea that people that are creative are in a union makes me crazy. When I found out that like musicians get into unions when they play on Broadway or, in symphonies, I'm like, wow, really? You're in a union? Well, yeah, nobody else is going to, that's honestly, once upon a time, like unions. I mean, you should just take care of that yourself. Well, no, the power of unions is being able to negotiate, which is my last thought here with Mark Cuban. He created a pharmaceutical company to negotiate the prices of prescriptions. And he said, I'm making 10 to 15, I make 15% on every transaction. We have transparent transactions. Scarilli, you guys remember who he was? He was the guy that took the essential AIDS vaccine, basically, the thing that you had to go on as soon as you were diagnosed with HIV, that literally quelled the actual virus. It contained it to the 5 or 6 cells. That's what they count it down to. And it doesn't attack your T cells anymore, which makes your T cell count go way up. You live a normal life. You have to protect, you may transmit. There's cautions to it. But it's like it literally got knocked down to any other venereal disease. I'm not minimizing them. I'm not, going down that path. But this guy was charging $600 a fucking pill. In the most inhumane way. He was like, he looked at it purely as numbers. He didn't think that there were actually people in the consumer basis. Mark Cuban said, I have a lot of resources, and this is how I'm going to use them. Mark Cuban is a champion. Is he looking to make money? Yeah, he is. I got news for you guys. We're all in it for the money. Until we paradigmally shift, we're in it for the money. Which, by the way, I wanted to announce I have slashed all my prices. You guys are going to wake up tomorrow morning to an email if you've signed up. I've dropped all of my prices. I'm not even going to tell you how I did it. But I look at the price gouging. I look at, you really struggle with value and worth and that sort of thing. And let's be honest, every single grocery store or every single tech company or every single blah, blah, blah isn't thinking what's a fair market value. They're trying to make up for their 2020 and 2021 losses. That's why they raise prices. Is that the reason why I raise prices? No, I'm on a different timeline. But should I drop them? Yeah, I kind of should. I should be more accessible. The things that I do is closer to the pharmaceutical world than the, gold-plated bullshit. So act accordingly. Would people pay it? Yeah. Am I busy? Always. Am I kind of taking it on the chin? Maybe. But when I ran a special at the beginning of the summer and I did a pay what you will, I had 50 people sign up. And those of you that saw me kind of in real life when I had shows or saw me out or whatever, everybody said the same thing. I was acting like somebody that had a glow about him. Because it's what I love to do. It's my purpose. So why would I ever let money get in the way? That's a value system, guys. I value the work more importantly than that. Is money important? Sure is. Is it important to Mark Cuban? Yeah. Because if he ever goes into the red, his first inclination will be to fix it, to change it. Why aren't we making money? How do we make this? People, process, product. Those are the 3 things you always work at. Thank you very much, Mark Lemonis. And we take a look at that and we figure out how to improve. Well, when you take a look at the product of the United States government, we got a lot of breaks, guys. And it's not about firing somebody at the top. Well, maybe you have to fire everybody in between. Maybe the 2025 thing makes a lot of sense, that we get a bunch of loyalists in there. So people actually do what I tell you to do. It is incredibly important that we just create jobs that have job descriptions where you can be creative, not to fly in the face of the purpose of it, but to drive the purpose into a greater place. That's the problem. Anybody ever work in a state or a county or a federal government job? You have 2 pages, 3 pages of description that you have to fill. You have to fulfill those things. And what you end up doing is you end up dying on the vine because there's no room. You're in a box. They need you to be in that box for the, 30 years until you retire. And the idea of this is when I looked at the astrology, I thought, who's a problem solver? And by the way, you can't deny what you already know. One of the things that is actually a god honest asset to Kamala Harris is we only sort of know her. She's familiar, but we don't know all of her mistakes. And by the way, I think they're out of talking about her mistakes. What, she put away too many criminals? She dated a few guys when she was single? Okay. Donald, you dated a few too many people when you was married. I'm sorry. But it's the idea that we're trying to smear our candidates based on who they are to try and get ourselves ahead instead of actually standing on policy, instead of standing on actual solutions. How did we get here? We're in trouble. The idea that we can create a new step. I mean, listen, in a moment of brutal honesty, we're still cleaning up. We're actually still cleaning up from the Bush administration. I'm just letting you know. You know, it's funny. Those that enjoy history, go back and take a look at Bush Gore and take a look at what happened at that election. Look at how many votes were thrown out because an average Q public didn't know to push through all the way, that they just pushed a tab in. And listen, without getting conspiracy theorist about it, what I prefer to do is just simply say to you, even if it's not about what got manipulated or who got thrown out, votes got thrown out. Your vote got thrown out in 2000. Was that impactful? I'll jump straight down the rabbit hole. 9/11 wouldn't have happened if the votes had been counted. There, I said it. Not like that, anyways. We literally got a template on how to scream no fair. We started to run on technicalities. We started to run on fear-based mongering. That template became where we went. And by the way, pick a side. Everybody's done it. There are currently 42 state-level court cases that changes the voting mechanism and would swing votes, 90% of them to Republicans in this country right now. And how many of you have actually read up on them? It's no longer about having value. It's about how do you manipulate the systems? How do you manipulate the process? Don't hate the player, hate the game. That's where we're at in this country. That's why we're in trouble. That's why we're staring it right into the storm and you're scared shitless. And on one side of it, it's like this militaristic autocracy, which may or may not. I'm going to tell you guys this right now. Donald Trump isn't going to be a dictator. Does that make you vote for him? Because his next statement will clean it up for you. Donald Trump isn't interested in being a dictator because he's not interested in the United States or its government. He is interested in outsourcing everything up to and including his influence. We wanted a change. We wanted to say, hey, we have to change this. We have gotten nightmare scenario after nightmare scenario. Kamala Harris is trying to bring back some sort of, it's running on the basis of hope. And listen, I talk to dead people. I get it. But what the hell does that mean? We hope it's the lesser of two evils. We hope that we can have some sort of structure where we don't see the, where the criminality isn't as transparent as it was under Trump. Right? I mean, the criticism of Biden is that he's kind of been grifting in his own way, but he's been doing it the way that every other politician is, which is exactly the reason why Trump was so appealing to people, to be like, hey, we're not going to do that anymore. And what did Trump do? Say, yeah, he didn't say we're not going to do that anymore. He said we're not going to do it like that anymore. I'm going to go ahead and talk to Russia and let them know that they can deposit their money in a Kremlin bank, and I'll be there. Now listen, I can't get it until the end of my presidency, but this is the way we're going to do it. What's the joke? Every congressman, every senator should wear a NASCAR jacket so you know who supported them. Guys, we're bought and sold over and over again. Don't have the expectation that Kamala Harris could fix that. Don't have the expectation. I had the expectation Donald Trump could fix it. Quite frankly, I'm like, well, I don't like the guy. He's bombastic. I think he's horrible towards women. And then the last 9 months of the presidency was an absolute. He ran rickshaw. Oh, and by the way, I talked to Anita Hill the other day. I didn't really, but I channeled it. I channeled that feeling of Anita Hill, and we'd like to go back and talk to Clarence Thomas about a few things. We have so many sheep. We have so many wolves in sheep's clothing. I had to be careful with how I said that one. We have so many wolves. But we had so many wolves in sheep's clothing that we lost track. We started to like the ones that were the lesser of evils. Listen, you look at the idea that Hillary Clinton was up against Donald Trump and she couldn't close the deal, tells you how flawed Hillary Clinton was. Donald Trump, if you go back to his website in 2016 before the election, he literally had only one thing on his website aside from his donation grift. It said, we have to hold our politicians accountable and drain the swamp. It was the only policy he had. Oh, and by the way, in case you are wondering with what he allows and what he, this is what proves the point. Donald Trump doesn't care about the country, he cares about Donald Trump. Why did Jared Kushner resign 7 days before the end of the administration and go sign a $2 billion deal with the Saudis? Who, by the way, we still had a beef with because they were killing people that spoke up against the government there. You want to do some astrology? I think you're going to like this. My gosh, how did I get here? How did I get here? Oh, maybe we can reverse this. Maybe I can do this and get my head there. Is that better? Is that better? I think so. All right, guys, let's take a look at, first and foremost, let's take a look at Kamala and Tim. They're kind of a likable couple, not going to lie. Now, again, politics aside, taking a look at this as a chart, why would Kamala say Tim Walz? Now, you had the governor, Shapiro, out of Pennsylvania, that I think a lot of people were really kind of edging towards. You had Mark Kelly out of Arizona. He's well liked. He was an astronaut. He grew 2 inches in space. I thought that was interesting. And by the way, every guy wants to go to space to grow 2 inches. But you take a look at these charts, and there are two things that really kind of stand out in this, right? First of all, they're only 6 months apart, 6 months and a couple of days, 6 months, maybe 2 weeks, 13 days, something like that. So astrologically, things like Jupiter is only going to move so much. Uranus is barely going to move. Pluto's the outside planets aren't going to really enact in one another. So in a sense, you're kind of doubling down. Where it was interesting when we looked at Trump and Vance, they had similarities. I mean, their Mars was similar. Like their rising was similar. They had the personality traits that were closer. So looking at Harris and Walz, we can talk about, I'm going to move my brain up here. How do I do that? Yeah, that's not going to work. How about over here? All right, that'll work. I didn't want to sit in Kamala's face. Keep it clean. It's awful. It's Madam President to you, Brandon. So the two things that really kind of pop out here is Tim Walz is on the outside, Kamala is on the inside. It was her choice to bring him in. So that's the perspective that I want to talk about this. Um, on her rising, again, you have the North Node. These are very like-minded people going, hey, we're on the same bus, ain't we? Right? Literally, like people within a year of each other, you're like, hey, we're kind of on the same bus here. What's interesting too about this is you both have them with a similar value system, right? Because in the fourth house, you still have Uranus and Pluto in conjunct. And of course, that's driven for family, the things that are closest to you, etc. With Kamala, she's got Venus in there. So for her, there's kind of a little bit of a different, like she has to kind of be a matriarch. She has to be the person in charge. But Tim not having that in this scenario, and by the way, there is no time of birth known for Tim Walz. So this is the only chart we can really kind of do this way. But his perspective in this, right, is that she kind of has this creative bone of the sun and Mercury together in the fifth house. They both have Neptune there. So, I mean, in a way you can say, oh, they're kind of canceling out. They're kind of, whatever. But that is a uniqueness that she brings to us to be like, how are we going to solve this? By the way, that is a problem solving mechanism right there. When you have the fifth house activated like that, especially with a conjunct or with Mars, you've absolutely gotten that part of it, right? But wait, there's more. There's definitely some more. I also like that their Chiron is both in the 10th house. Chiron, as you know, is the great healer. She got somebody in Tim Wells to say, we got to do some healing here. And by the way, like it or not, we still, whether you're railing from 2016 to 2020, or if you're railing in the last 4 years, recognizing that this country still needs to heal. I think we need to heal from bigger things than one person has presented. Let's quit playing small ball. This isn't about Trump. This isn't about Biden. This is about our intrinsic nature of our conditioning to think that the money is more important than our family. This is overcoming the idea that we have a fealty to a country where a bunch of white fat men made decisions like sending your 18-year-old child to war for centuries. That's what we're trying to heal from. We're trying to heal from cover-ups. We're trying to heal from manipulation. We're trying to recover from stock prices. You guys do know the stock market is going to go away, right? They don't. So the Chiron placement here is very important to me. Also, I think he's a taskmaster to Kamala. Now, you could say he's a patsy, maybe, but I love this Mars placement in her 10th house. I love it. Because I think, and again, her 10th house with Chiron in it tells me a lot. If I didn't think she was, if I didn't know her political history or her legal history, I would have said maybe she's a nurse. Maybe she's adopted kids because of her fourth house. Her well of compassion runs deep. It might also cloud her judgment, just to let you know. Because the fourth house and the 10th house are in opposition to one another. The other thing that Tim brings to the table, and this one just blows it out of the water, everybody. His 10th house is rocking and rolling, or his 11th house is rocking and rolling, or her 11th house is rocking and rolling because of him. His sun, Jupiter, Mercury. We are a wide conjunct of Mercury and Jupiter. That is over her moon. So the things that she is steadfast about, ardent about, social issues, they're on the same page. And by the way, I actually think Kamala has an opportunity to temper him a little bit. I think he's a little off the rails at times, guys. I do. And it's not because he's a gregarious guy and he goes on slingshots with his daughter, which, by the way, if you haven't seen that video, you haven't lived. It's awesome. It's fantastic. Did he tell us that he has a tip line if somebody's not wearing a mask? I'm sorry, what? Oh, yeah. If any of you Minnesotans say, and by the way, I'm from Ohio. I'm from Iowa, but I was able to, when I came up here, they gave me 3 things. They gave me a North Star jersey. They gave me cheese curds and this accent. And then I went ahead and, I know what that's about. I mean, it's, kind of all in good nature and everything. And, so listen, if any of your friends or we got to wear the whole mask thing, and I know it's uncomfortable and I know we don't like it, but if you see your neighbor not wearing one, you can call our toll-free number, anonymous of course, and just let us know, and we'll do a little knocky and tell them. And if we catch them a couple of times, we'll give them a fine, and we might even throw you in jail if you keep it up. That was literally one of his policies. I'm not down with that. Kiss my ass. It's a t-shirt, I think. I just read that somewhere. But in the scheme of things, does he have a level head, and is he ardent about things? I mean, you can say that he brought that approach because he wanted the overall health of the people. He was being utilitarian, saying, I don't care if this is uncomfortable, we've got to do this. Right? But I think that was a little far reaching. We're worried about the other side being fascist. Nothing's more fascist than telling on your neighbors. That ain't cool. Let's find a little center here. We need to be center, guys. It's the only survivalist way. You want to survive this? We need to be centerist. Sorry. Can we take care of people and make profit? Yes, but what's too much profit? What's too much of taking care of people? When does it become a waste of time, effort, and money? When do you feel valued versus when do you feel like you can contribute? These are the questions that I have, and especially in that 11th house there, I think Kamala can bring him into line with it, to be honest with you, because a lot of the things that she's brought to the table, part of her criticism was that she was putting away too many people that were selling drugs. And by the way, the Trump administration brought that up because he wanted to kind of say, like, see, she put away all these black people. She doesn't really love you. By the way, is she black? Is she Indian? I don't know. It doesn't matter. By the way, I have gone 1 hour and 8 minutes. Thank you very much. Before I mentioned race. Get used to that shit, guys. Because if you think their race matters, you're out of your fucking mind. Decision making is decision making. Either you're good at it or you're not. The thing that I look for in a candidate is somebody that can think things through. Mark Cuban thought that through and said, no, I'm hiring that guy. Whatever you can give me. If you can only give me once every 3 months, we get together with the committee and you give some information and we feed you some stuff in between. I'm happy to pay you to get your insight because your job is going to be to have the pulse on the industry and to advise us on it. If that's all you can give me, that's what we're going to get. Trump didn't say that, though. He said, who do you know over at Oracle? Come on. All right. So why did Kamala Harris choose Tim Walz? Because he is someone that is going to be passionate about her public agenda. He is somebody that is going to be understood. He is eloquent in his speeches. He has thought out in many ways. They are both very 9th house. They have a lot of philosophies that are similar. The last thing that he would bring to the table is that his Venus is in the 12th house. The idea that hope is part of their conversation makes a lot of sense right here. It just does. All right. On to our next slide here. Let's take a look at this debacle. I'm going to mute this for a second and crack this open. I spent some time on this, so we're gonna spend some time on it. By the way, introducing. I'm trying to kick soda, guys. I'm drinking the sparkling water stuff. It's okay. It's okay. It's not the same. Anyways, so Elon Musk and Donald Trump on a fateful day in the interview. That's what the three rings are. And I know that this is a little bit tough to see, but I needed to do it like this in order to fit it all in there. So I'll kind of bring it to fruition here. I should probably do a full chart on Elon Musk because one of the things, and I'm going to go to actually my notes on my phone here for this. Elon Musk, is this enigmatic character that there are moments where I go, okay, what's going on here? He's good for the world, he's good for the country, and then he just opens his mouth, and then I go, what the hell are you doing? So he's got a couple of triads. He also has a very interesting triad or a stellium going on in his, of all places, third house, where he has Pluto, Lilith, as well as Uranus. Now, Uranus sitting in your third house is a natal position. It is allowing you to grow and expand. It's heavy technology. It is pushing the boundaries of that. So Elon Musk, as a human, has that going for him. His sun is in the 12th house, the house of the undoing. His rising is Cancer. So he might have a humanoid. He might kind of be looking towards the best of humanity. And his 10th house is vacant as well as his 4th house. He has 7 kids by 3 different women, and he can't really get their names right. It's in his chart. He is an Aquarius Mars sitting in his 8th house, which is he's a fundraiser. He can figure that out. Saturn in Gemini in the 11th house. He's a bit of a chameleon for whoever needs him. And his Mercury is on his ascendant in Cancer. So to me, this is very much about, he's very much somebody that can move the needle. He's somebody that can push technology. Like, he would be a great guy to, Steve Jobs would have loved to have locked him in a room and just let him create for him. Like with this chart, 100%. Hey, Trish, we see you. We're doing some chart politics. You're gonna love some of my impressions. And in comparison here, so what does Donald Trump see with him? Well, to me, it's a little bit obvious. It's a little too obvious. His tech company is failing. Matter of fact, it's not really a tech company, it's more of a tech grift. Just like his sneakers fall apart. Did you guys hear that? His golden sneakers, somebody decided to wear them because they're like, if I'm going to pay $400 for a pair of sneakers, I'm going to wear them. He wore them around and the whole thing ripped apart. Quality. So Elon and Donald are a generation apart. They are, with Elon in the center square here, the influence that he would try and have on him, this is amazing. So Elon Musk's third house lines up with Trump's Neptune, Chiron, and Jupiter. So basically, he's looking to Elon Musk to get his communications back online and to perpetuate his lies, because Neptune's sitting there, his dreaminess, his whatever. The Chiron, I got to tell you, Chiron in Libra for Trump sitting right here is he's trying to fix it. He's trying to fix it, but he doesn't fix it. Right? He was also looking to Elon to be some stability for him because Saturn was sitting in the first house, right? Along with Venus. So he wanted somebody to really be like, he looks up to Elon. He looks up to Elon for sure, for sure. And then you have this 12th house menagerie going on here where, Elon's got his son, but then the sun shows up. Trump's son is also in his 12th house. So this is either going to go really well or really bad. And we kind of know how that went. Mercury was over Elon's son, which is kind of like a, hey, he is. And, I don't blame him for it. I don't blame him for taking a shot. But guess what? Guess what happened? Guess what tanked everybody? Yeah, the Trump stock that his Truth Social runs through. I mean, guys, this is a guy who we want to run for president. that has these peaks and valleys in his company that he opened this year. This isn't over the course of 20 years where you ride cycles. And by the way, this is where he got shot. And this is where they debated. He brought Biden to his knees on that one. Woohoo! You beat up an 81-year-old guy. Winner. Can't blame them. It's who the Democrats put up, and that's when the Democrats went, we got to change this. What are we going to do? You know what we're going to do? We're going to do this right after the Republican convention. We're going to let them choose their point. They're going to be like, yeah, old guys suck and blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm old, but I ain't that old. I mean, that kind of summarizes the entire election cycle, doesn't it? I'm not old. I'm old too, but I'm not that old. I'm shitty too, but I'm not as shitty as the other one. That's our standard? No. No. I want to take a look at this right now. I want to do a little prediction love here because you guys deserve it. By the way, go back and watch the JD Vance video. JD Vance was chosen because he just has so many similarities astrologically to Trump. They're the same rising. They're the same, their Mars lines up. They don't really have checks and balances here, right? So this is taking a look at just after the Democratic convention. So basically that last week in August. These are essentially replacements. You've got the moon passing through Mercury here on his rising. By the way, Donald Trump's in the center, but it's so similar to JD Vance. They're the same person astrologically because their birth dates and their risings are so close. So you've got the moon there, you've got Mercury floating through. So you're going to have a course of action here. You also have in the first house the sun, right? This is the sun that is going to reflect on Trump, it's going to reflect on Vance, and they need to make it about them. Trump, the center square, needs to make this about him. But there's Vesta going, what did you learn, DJT? You also have in transit the South Node along with Venus and Lilith. Lilith does some real... Got to pay attention to what Lilith does. By the way, we have, of the 4 candidates for president and vice president, 3 of them have Lilith in Sagittarius. Let that sink in for a minute. By the way, they're 18 years apart. Lilith is in a 9-year cycle. It makes perfect sense. Tim Walz and Kamala are only 6 months apart. Didn't move out of Sagittarius yet. If you want to do a deep dive on any of this, and you really want to start to roll up, if you want to roll up your sleeves, do yourself a little search on Lilith in Sagittarius, and you're going to see some behavioral mechanisms there. There's some good and there's some tough stuff there, for sure. For sure. So here's my shot in this. Now, I don't understand why I cut off here. Well, first of all, JD Vance is replaced. I'm going to put that at a near 50%. I think that they recognize that there wasn't the boost that they needed, and they think sometimes changing parts. I think there's revenge. I mean, Donald Trump is about revenge. So, you went ahead and you changed your candidate. So guess what? I'm going to change mine. Yeah, 2 could play that game. Number 2, Trump drops out of the race completely and cops a plea bargain. There have been documented reports that back channels have been in contact with the Georgia state governor to drop the charges of election fraud. Arizona would also need to be included in that. The missing piece in that is Kathy Hochuli in New York, and I'm not entirely sure she would play games, but This is about Donald Trump. The last thing to this is that he would pull the biggest stunt, political grifting stunt in the history of the world. And listen, I don't have time to analyze where bullet wounds happen and where gunshots get flying by, and ugh, you can't even say it. But you really stand up afterwards and pump your fist. I mean, either it was planned or he's truly a psychotic. And moreover, he doesn't respect the Secret Service. Secret Service is trying to keep you alive right there, you jerk. This man is not, he's not incapable of pulling shit out of his ass for his own good, for his own fame. Great question. Could a few of these things happen? Sure as shit, yeah. I have decided to go to Venezuela and run my campaign from there. I will be campaigning in Venezuela, the great state of Venezuela. Victor Orban and I are having tea and coffee. Of course, I never drink that. I just do cocaine. All those are rumors, allegedly. But could all of those things happen? Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you why. The sun is in his first house. It is about him. Saturn is in his seventh house. He is going to absolutely try and grift on everybody. Like, hey, these are new. Hey, here's a new angle. Here's a thing. And by the way, in the eighth house is the delusional Neptune rocking through there. And he has a date with destiny. I am going to be steadfast to this. Donald Trump will not be in this country. He is out of here. I had to compare his chart to Napoleon's. Welcome to Elba. You historians love that stuff, by the way. All right, let's take a look at Election Day. Just static, no candidates. It's a bright, sunny day. The Bambino is due on the 5th of November. On the 5th of November, it was covered in snow. And so was the turnpike from Stockbridge to Baston. All right, taking a look at this. This is at the static time of when the polls open. And by the way, I want you to really pay attention to this chart. And you're like, Brandon, it almost looks pretty, doesn't it? But let's go from the outside in. First of all, I call it Election Day. I brought us to the U.S. lunatic asylum located in Washington, D.C. It was the closest place I could find. The United States Capitol was not on my Google search here for this. We chose 9 o'clock because Eastern Standard Time, this is when the polls open. We're just going to say this is the start of the election day. Now, some polls open at 8, some polls open whatever, but 9 o'clock, everything's officially open. That is when the East Coast is open. That is the official start time. Now, Uranus sitting here on the ascending tells you everything you need to see. It's in the 12th house. There will be election disruption. There will be communication issues. There will be issues that are connected to what's going on. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Uranus here in a second. But just note that, because I'm going to show you another graphic here that talks about Uranus being in a wide opposition here to the sun, because that's going to be a very critical thing. You also have Pluto in opposition to Mars. Now, it doesn't create a grand cross here. We've got 2 fixed signs with Uranus and the sun. And then you have, and again, they're in opposition. They're a wide opposition, but it's important to show the opposition. And I'm not going to pay too much attention to the houses per se, but Pluto being in opposition to Mars is critical stuff. The moon will be in Capricorn the entire day, the entire election day, from the start of the election to the end of it. The Capricorn moon, and by the way, it's going to be coming up on the quarter moon. Not quite. Not quite. About 3 days after, 2.5 days after. But the Capricorn moon is going to represent, as it is in a wide conjunct, but still conjunct to Venus, to be like, screw your emotions. Calm your emotion. Use your head. Forget about your heart. What works for you? Or forget about your heart. What's in your head? What works for you? Right? That's what the Capricorn moon is going to be shouting here. But this is some disruption stuff. So I stripped down the map a touch, and I left in Neptune, and I'm going to share with you why here in a second, because it is trine, right? So you have Pluto in opposition to Mars. That is an activator of passion. That is an activator of getting things right. If you're looking at this time frame, which by the way is a little bit later on in the day, like when polls are closing, but don't get hung up on that. Just talk about the opposition here. Pluto in opposition to Mars is an activator of action, of power shifting, and it is about cycles ending by force. Which side am I talking about? I don't know yet, guys. But you can very easily see Trump going, hey, you know what? We had to take over the Capitol because we won the election. You can see the Democrats basically going, yeah, we defeated the idea that we would be in autocracy. Both sides are going to get run here, guys. Both sides are going to get run. Then the sun in opposition to Uranus here. I'm going to show this right here. Sun opposite of Uranus. This is the clash of ego and decision. So it's really important that you recognize that if you're indecisive, somebody that is decisive is going to run rickshaw on you. Go back to that Cuban story. I know who I am. I want to see my kids get old. I want to see the grandkids. I want to know them. That's more important to me than whether or not you're successful as a president. Which, by the way, Cuban's an okay guy, but he's not a good guy. Right? Sun opposite of Uranus, significant and profound change. When we wake up on November the 6th, it should feel different. It should, because you have this event, you have the star stuff. And by the way, is Uranus no longer going to be in opposition? No, it's going to be more in opposition. So this is going to take about a week before we actually get a result. And by the way, that doesn't mean that Kamala Harris doesn't win by 10% of the vote. It doesn't mean that it's not decisive. It means that there'll be questions about what happened. There will be questions about traditional values over freedom and love. In other words, are we going to go back the same way? If Kamala Harris's goal is to go back in and have it go back to the way it was in 2012, 2008, we're in trouble. Don't think we can just roll the clock back to Obama time and be like, it was a good couple of years. I don't agree with all the politics, but there was some good stuff there, right? And if you think that we're going to roll back to 1949, that's even more devastating. We have to have a new paradigm coming in. The sun and Uranus actually give us that tone. I think we're going to really figure out who we are in the next couple of weeks. I really do. This is also a tension between core principles and the change that you need around them. In other words, taking a look at things like the traditional family value. Maybe it's taking a look at how we actually treat immigrants. Maybe it's how we maybe we start respecting money instead of printing Yeah. Are we out of money? Can we just print some more? It's interesting because you have this. Yeah, Mama O in New Hampshire. It's funny. I've kind of called my shot on that too, about him not being on the ballot. I'm telling you, astrologically, after this Democratic convention, or even during the Democratic convention, I could see him saying, "You know what? This isn't worth it. I'm out of here. Fuck you guys. You guys don't love me enough. Yeah, I'm going home." Where's home? Saudi Arabia. By the way, Trump is gonna go, guys. And when you look at the astrology of what happened during that time, it was all, he has his escape pod ready. By the way, you know what he did do during that time? What I'm about to say is going to piss some people off. During that time where I said that Donald Trump was a flight risk, he was busy purchasing a plane. Now, he didn't know the history of the plane. He just wanted to buy a new plane, lease it. The plane that he leased was Jeffrey Epstein's plane. Let that sink in. Now, listen, if you want to debunk that, I haven't been able to find the true whatever, but the serial numbers, they have since changed the tail number, but the serial number on the airplane is the exact same as the famous Epstein plane. And now Donald Trump is flying around in it. By the way, this is also a reveal. When I first started doing, I'm going to save that story, but I'm going to come back to this. So you have the sun in opposition to Uranus. And the thing that I think is really going to help is Neptune is trine to the sun. It is trine in an angle here where we are water sign to water sign. It's just moving into this. It's, I mean, listen, it's a wide trine, but it's a trine. I think we're kind of like, I think the universe is saying, if you want to, it's here. But Neptune, the planet of dreams, of hopes, what do I think will happen with this election? I actually think the American dream might come back into focus. I think we've got a lot of work to do. I think it's going to require us not to bitch about every little thing and be upset that our soy milk isn't warm enough, and that, somebody parked too close to us, and that the neighbor's music is a little too loud, and, and I can't believe that the teacher was human and forgot to tell me that my kid scratched himself and got a Band-Aid. Like, we're going to have to learn how to undo some of the tensions and the contentious, obnoxious, arrogant behavior that we've possessed over the last 15 years, because we've gotten really good at it. But I think that Neptune placement is going to be very influential to allowing us to reinstitute a new American dream, to help us say, like, okay, well, what's today? Maybe it's not about 2.3 kids in a white picket fence. Maybe it's about the pursuit of happiness. Maybe it's about understanding, and what makes you happy doesn't make me happy. Right? Oh, we know Trump and Epstein were friends. Oh, we know they were friends. There's video. There's commentary. But this will allow us and gives us the opportunity to reinstate a new way to look at it. And this Mars squaring the sun, along with Neptune trining it, is going to be about the action that we have. Now, do you believe in the new world order of being able to take away everybody's rights so that then you can control them? And again, if you don't believe in the Project 2025, the amount of information is overwhelming. Okay. They're telling you who they are. Is Kamala Harris keeping it close to the vest and not saying a whole lot? A little bit. It might be good if she started talking policy herself too. Pluto being trying to Uranus means that this is going to be a big change. Huge change. Punch in the gut change. Well, in order to make things more efficient, we had to get rid of cheese curds, but lettuce is no longer $8 a head. Were you willing to take that exchange? As long as we can get back to the cheese curds, I'm okay with that. Right? So we have a dialogue and an opportunity about how we can approach things. I'm going to wrap this up with one more slide. Let's take a look at what Kamala Harris's chart and Donald Trump's chart looks like on election day. This is the part you saved this video for, guys. Genuinely. It's right here. All right, we're ready? By the way, I made a very conscious decision to use the official photograph of each one of them. And from this day forward, I don't even want to use the word Kamala. I want to use the word Harris. Because I don't want to call him Donald anymore. We just call him Trump. We call him Trump like it's a power move. I will not emasculate or demasculate Harris anymore. So I want to point out things. And by the way, this is what the astrological effects on their chart is. So the centerpiece, on one side you've got Trump, on the other side you've got Harris. Harris, sitting here on the inside, has some very unique pointers. She actually has all of the tiebreakers, and I'm going to point out what they are here in a second. Donald Trump has a very interesting layout here. And again, this is even if he's on the ticket anymore. I'm telling you guys, there's a stunt coming, and it's huge. I want you to pay attention to Jupiter in both of their charts. Jupiter and Uranus. Because in this 10th house, and again, one of the strengths of Trump was that his 10th house was chock full of the stellium of the North Node, the Sun, and Mercury. Or of Uranus, rather. He has this dynamic, right? That he knows how to be business. He's defined by business. He has Jupiter over that stellium. He has Jupiter almost conjunct to Uranus. Jupiter coming in is Jupiter saying, Jupiter looks at those planets down there and goes, I see your natal planets. Nice natal planets. How can I make them better? How can I make them expand? Because that's what I do. How do I go big or go home? How do I develop this in a way that will just be expansive? Because that's what I do. When Jupiter comes in like that, it's kind of like, have you ever seen a balloon get blown up too much with water, let's say? And then what happens? It just, that's Jupiter's influence. Sometimes it gets too much. When you have a stellium, everything else is activated. I'm here to tell you that Jupiter is not doing Donald Trump any favors because his goal is to be famous and known publicly. Jupiter is going to activate Uranus and make him explode. Make him go completely unhinged. But wait, there's more. If we take a look at where Uranus is in Kamala's chart, Harris's chart, I'll get it right. It is in conjunct with Jupiter. And it's in the 12th house. Shit just got real, guys. Because where Jupiter comes into Uranus in Trump's chart, you have Uranus coming into Jupiter in Harris's chart. Combined with the idea that it's the 12th house, what that translates to is Uranus is saying things like, hey, we're going to kind of, the rebellion is here. The rebellion is here. The rebellion is the people out here coming in. Do you have the power to give us what we need? Do you have the expectations? Do you have the abilities? And her Jupiter in the 12th house goes, I can bring you hope. I can bring you joy. I could also be your worst nightmare. Because here in the 12th house, we're about hopes and dreams. We're about spiritual expansion, whether you're ready for it or not. Uranus is looking around going, I'm just here to fuck shit up. I'm just here to make things. I'm here for change. Maybe even for change's sake, but I'm here for change. Jupiter's like, I've been in this 12th house for 60 friggin' years. And listen, I have seen Jupiter go flying past me a couple of times already. 5 times to be exact. And every single time we take another leap. We take another leap. We take another leap. Now Uranus shows up and goes, the rebellion is here. We're going to empower people. We're going to empower others. The 12th house isn't about the person. The first house is. The other incredibly interesting comparison of these two charts, not only the Uranus-Jupiter connection, look at both of their first houses. There ain't nothing in it. By the way, that's an argument that Donald Trump won't be on the ticket. Because he'll be like, I'm not involved here. Kamala can look at it and say, this isn't about me. But guess what? The North Node, look at the positions of their north of their rising sign. Donald Trump has Mars on his rising. Kamala Harris has the North Node. The North Node is about destiny. In Gemini, it's about understanding both sides of it. By the way, you're also going to make some communication gaffes sometimes when you have Gemini rising. Because sometimes Gemini rising is about the duality that you have, about the duality, about the two things, about the signs that you have, because there's two of them. She's going to say shit like that, guys. And that's okay. I mean, maybe. Donald Trump is going to say, we're going to kick their ass. We're going to punch them in the nuts. We're going to give them a little one of these, a couple of those, and a Tayaya Gundiye. You want me to keep going? Because I will. The other comparison is what's going on here. I think it's interesting. The 9th house is vacant with Trump as well. Stranger in a strange... Oh. He's so out of this country. Fucking wow. The 9th house is vacant. The 6th house is vacant. The 1st house is vacant. Is he on the planet even? The 1st house is empty because he won't have his identity. His identity's gone. The 6th house is the people that are around him. He's getting abandoned. There's no help here. There's no external influence here. The 9th house, which is about our travel, our wisdom, our knowledge, is empty. Will he learn his lessons? I don't know. The Sagittarius conjunct Moon on Trump's chart It's in the 4th house natally, and then it's in the 5th house in transit here. It's him taking off and him getting creative. Is he taking Baron and Melania? I think he would take Ivanka before he took any of them. Just being honest. Do you have to bring Jared? Oh, he's got the money. He's got $2 billion. Okay, you can come. But this voided 6th house and this voided 9th house. And look at how he approaches money. Did he learn any lessons in what made him comfortable? I don't know. Over his Neptune, over his Chiron, over his Jupiter. Did he learn anything? Because he's all about the structure of money and the illusions that he can create with it. Here's Chiron in the 8th house for him. Could he heal? Is he destined to be healed? And oh, by the way, look at this. Neptune is basically, it's not quite an opposition, but you've got Neptune in the 8th house compared to his 2nd house natally. The illusions are coming to roost here, guys. The mask is falling. Kamala's vacant house is right here in the 1st house. Maybe she's a puppet. Guys, you can't put anything past us anymore. You got to question everything. Not maliciously, but you've got to question it. Or is she just that unselfish? She's got the North Node riding her ascendant. She's a person of destiny. Jupiter is conjunct to the North Node. She is prime for destiny. People have been asking me, what does the chart say about Kamala? If she's not the president of the United States, she's become the most famous person in the world. Because with her South Node sitting in the 6th house, she's very comfortable in her own skin. You know, by the way, having Venus in conjunct with her South Node, conjunct with the moon of Sagittarius, she's going to love everybody around her appropriately. Calm down, rumor mills. Her 9th house has nothing in it in transition. So you have to rely on her lessons and her structure. And guess what? That calms the beast over here. And by the way, having Mars in the 3rd house in Leo, she sometimes might go off the cuff a little bit. She's not the best with that. But with this void in the transit means that you rely on the structure of this. So she's learned her lessons. She doesn't need any help here. Saturn in conjunct to Chiron. You know what that screams to me? We're going to heal. We're going to take this moment and she's going to pick up the ball and she's going to run with it. North Node in her 10th house conjunct to Neptune. Do you ever think you'd see a black woman president? It's in her chart. Might not have been in our purview, might not have been in our lexicon, but it's in her chart. Her 5th house is activated. She has the stellium of the Sun, Mercury, and Neptune. And guess what? Lilith, the undercover healer. She's like, you know what? I know what I'm doing. You're asking me to heal this country without using the word heal. You're asking me to fix an economy without telling people they're wrong. Okay. Sun shining on Neptune, dreams are coming alive, and the creativity was there. Did Kamala Harris do some things that might have been shady? Probably. The term politician is another language for shady shit. But you have the opportunity to rise into it, which, by the way, I think was what most people hoped for with Trump. Like, we knew he had some sus things, but maybe he can take the reign and rise to the level of being presidential. Instead, he looked at it as, this is a candy store and I'm going to eat all the candy. Kamala Harris doesn't look at it that way. She understands the gravity of her elevation. Now, if you want to be critical that she doesn't want a single primary, I'm going to hear that. We sidestepped a lot of stuff here, guys. We got to get back to basics. Is this the way it's going to be? I refuse to declare technicalities as the win or the loss. But what I am willing to do is to look at these two charts and tell you one person is good for the country and one person is good for themselves. It's funny, I started to tell a story earlier, and I'm going to wrap up with this. I did this shamanic journey, and it was an automatic writing exercise. And in that channel, I connected with maybe a guide. It was almost more of someone. There was a man and a woman. They were not of this culture, but they weren't necessarily indigenous. And they kept telling me that there was going to be a great reveal coming. And I needed to be ready for it. And I needed to know who I was. I needed to know what I was about. I needed to feel accomplished in what I did. I needed to know that my value was consistent with my actions. And they kept talking about this great reveal over and over and over again. It's the illusion of things. It's the misunderstanding of things. It's the whatever. And I think that I watched, when I went to Houston, I didn't really share this publicly. I may have mentioned it, but I went to a mega church. I went to Joel Osteen's, I guess I'll just say it, church, because I wanted to see how they lived. And those of you that know this story, I'm going to be super brief. I went to this mass. I was on the upper deck, seeing all these people, and I was impressed with some things. It ran like a TV production. Everybody knew their place. Everybody knew when their cue was. He came out and and to tell you that the Lord always loves you. And, it's the same shit over and over again, guys. Church is like a Mexican restaurant. They got 7 ingredients and they just mix them up differently. That's it. Just letting you know. This from a guy that's taken all but one of the sacraments. If I get one more, I get a set of steak knives. But I'm sitting up there and I'm watching, I'm observing, and I'm watching people's reaction. I'm hearing people be enthralled. And then I'm watching half of the people look at where the cameras are. I'm watching people kind of like making sure that their hair is just right before the cameras go live. And then I was watching people openly weep because they had a cathartic release in the message. And they had a guest pastor in, and he brought in somebody that had converted and had become a pastor themselves. He had accepted the Lord, and he had done 18 years because the heroin that he sold killed almost 15 people because it had fentanyl in it. And he got out because of a technicality. And he prayed the Lord every day, and that technicality came through. I'm sorry, what? And as I sat there, I looked at how efficient they were. And the bookstore and the people that were there to help you if you needed it. Do you need somebody to talk to about the Lord? Do you need somebody to help you through this moment? And altruistically, it's actually pretty good. It's actually a very kumbaya moment. Oh, and the musicians, oh my gosh, they were top notch. I mean, the drummer, the guitarist, the vocalists, just amazing. But it was a show. Because when I left there, I walked to the parking lot and I found a homeless man sitting there. And he was expecting me to give him money. I had no problem handing him the $20 because I couldn't quite figure out which envelope I should have put my money in because they had so many of them. And they don't do a collection. They just have collection boxes outside the auditorium, which, by the way, seats 18,000 people. And it was funny because the conversations in the hallway wasn't about scripture, wasn't about the message. It was about politics. Houston is a very cool city. There's amazing people there. The further north you go, the better they get. But those people wanted to have small talk about their points of view, and they were just reinforcing the same shit they already believed in, just like church did for them every week. Here's this homeless guy that I'm handing $20 to. And I talked to him for a few minutes, and I said, so, do you ever go inside? As a matter of fact, I go in for the next mass. And I'm like, the next service. I'm sorry, not mass. He said, next service. And he said, I go in for the next service even though I don't really know Spanish. And I'm like, whoa. I'm like, you go in, they have a Spanish service? Oh, yeah, it's the 12 o'clock. I'm like, oh, that's okay. Cool beans. So what do you do? Well, actually, I hang out after the first two, and this gets me by the whole week, because then when I go in there for the 12 o'clock, then that's when they have the food. Oh, what do you do? I mean, do you get a good meal? Oh yeah, they make sure I have plenty of food, and then they tell me to come back next week. And I said, how long have you been homeless? He's like, oh, 6, 7, 8 years. How long have you been doing this for? Oh, 6, 7, 8 years. Did anybody inside of there actually try and help you? Well, they give me food every week. They let me sit outside. They don't, sometimes people get chased away by the police, but they don't. They always let me go. So why are you homeless? I don't know. Just haven't been able to get it together. It's the bills are too much. I owe people money. I don't even know where to start. I don't. Talk for a few minutes about all the things that we all struggle with every day. You get another bill. Oh, how am I going to pay for this? Well, this guy just mounted up. And by the way, he was very eloquent. He was missing 2 of his front teeth because he hadn't seen a dentist in those 6, 7, 8 years. So he's not going to get hired something, hospitality where he's in front of people. I said, when was the last time you worked? He goes, well, I don't get hired often. But I do some day labor stuff, whenever they want to, whenever they can hire me and it's cash. And I'm just waiting for it. I'm just waiting for him to say something that he was in the way. And I made no assumptions. And I said, well, I hope this $20 serves you. And I hope that when you go inside and they say, here's the help, here's some help, why don't you ask him for a job? And maybe you can clean up after and whatever. And he said, oh, that's a good idea. And I walked to my car. And there was a man and a woman dressed to the nines, polished shoes. He had a particular bumper sticker on his car. And he said, you're a better man than me. I just know that's going for booze. And I said, well, I appreciate that. I said, well, he just needed some help. Did you help him? I helped him last week. said, okay. Hey, I noticed that you have some really nice clothes. Do you ever cycle those through? And she goes, oh, I donate my time all the time. I donate my clothes. I go right down to the women's shelter and I drop the bag off. First I get it dry clean and then I bring it down there. And I said, have you ever seen somebody walk down the street with your clothes on? Like, isn't that a little weird? Oh, no, I don't know what I'd say. Well, I got rid of it for a reason. The point of the story is they were in their own world interpreting things. The only thing that we really have at the end of the day is our personal truth. Joel Osteen thinks he's doing a great job. Criticism would show otherwise. Those two walking to their car dressed to the nines think that they're doing God's work by showing up on Sundays. That man is doing what he thinks is surviving. And all three of those things are what's wrong with this country. I'm not going to criticize Joel Osteen for owning mansions and riding in limousines. And by the way, he told this great story about how there were 3 limousines out front. And how somebody criticized him for arriving to and fro from the service in a limousine, and isn't that money better spent? And then he says, well, Judas, that was someone who was in a Make-A-Wish or something, and somebody donated the limo rides, and they were living in, they were able to ride in a limo for the first time of their life. So he's kind of like, ha, in your face, it wasn't me. And then he gets in his fucking decked out Escalade and pulls out of the air-conditioned basement. But I wasn't in the limo. I caught you. Oh, I donate my clothes. I get rid of my shitty stuff. Oh, I gave him money last week. He should learn how to invest. We have such a misconception about what other people's capacities are. And everybody in that building, I used to judge them. From the pulpit from the pendulum to the pit. If I can go ghost on this. And I realized some of those people needed that space because it's the only thing that they've allowed themselves to see. Do you know why people are voting for Trump? Because they're pissed off at something and they love that somebody acts pissed off like they did. They love that they feel in some way that he can actually change anything. Do you know why people are voting for Kamala? Because you can go back to a safety that you once knew. The same safety we used to call broken all the time. And we said, this has got to change. Did we make progress socially? Big time. Have we changed things in ways? Did we take a giant step back and ruin precedents from 50? We were getting good at this. We were in tweak mode. In 2020, in 2016, we were in tweak mode. We were in fucking tweak mode. We didn't quite have it right, but we knew we were close. We've got to change it. Change it. I'll change it. We'll drain the swamp. Do you guys know that Vance means swamp in Scotland? Fucking hello. So instead, we had to blow things up, and maybe there's purpose to it. Those of you that don't know, I have a publishing company. And there is a book coming out. It's written by a 26-year-old. And she talks about the personal accountability she had to realize for herself after she graduated. She got caught up in the negative speak. She got caught up in the in trying to diagnose herself. She got caught up in peer pressure. She got caught up in failure mode. She got caught up in things, and she wasn't self-destructive. She became very, and by the way, she's a behavioral therapist, and she picked it apart, and she wrote this incredible book, and I'm honored to be publishing it because it's a guide for if you have a kid living at home that's over 20 years old, that's over 22 years old, this is a book for you. I'm going to be talking about it here in the next couple of weeks because we're just putting some final touches on it. You're going to be able to pre-order it next week. But that's where we 26-year-old kid wrote a book about personal accountability through your emotional development. And don't sit around and say, oh, woe is me, and the economy's bad, and I can't do this, and I can't do that. When it shows you that that's not what you're supposed to do, go do something else. How do you think that I ended up with a studio and a book and a YouTube channel, and I travel the world, and I talk to dead people? My options were running out in other places because I was getting frustrated. I couldn't perform, to the normative of big corporate production anymore. I knew how to sell it, but I didn't want to do it anymore. I wish I'd figured out what this book writes about when I was 26. I'd have done it differently, but I can't live in the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. I'm going to live in the, well, I got it now. You only know what you know until you know it, right? The reality of who these people are, you only know what you know right now. Harris could turn out to be the best or the worst president ever. It's in her chart. Then you do the comparison game. Is it this one or that one? You ever buy a car? You drive 3 cars. Which one do you pick? Right? If one of them you don't like at all, well, it makes your thing easy. You want the title of the book? I wish I could share this. Well, if you're on it's called Shift Your Standards. And it is a wonderful book written by Michelle Johnson, who is, we're going to have her on the podcast. You're going to get a chance to know her. He said he will spill the beans soon. Who's that? Who's he? Trump? Yeah, Trump is going to run up the scale and run the flag up. So then you say, what's he doing now? And we'll all tune in like a bunch of fools. And Elon Musk will say, check out my feed. Right? By the way, it's not out yet. The book release will be out on September the 5th. You're going to get tons of stuff out there between here and there. I'd love you to support her. As a self-publishing house, we give people the tools to self-publish. She owns her book. We get paid for the work that we do on it, but it's her book, and it's amazing. It's amazing. It's amazing. There's another book that we have coming out called Journey for Justice, about a woman who fought the government to get benefits for her veteran husband. And it's a love story, and it's a story of perseverance. He had tinnitus and she had tenacity. That's a book that Elaine Myers has coming out with us. And then I have another book. I actually have another series coming out, which I think you guys are going to like. The Oracle cards are underway. There's so many fun things going on, guys. Oh, and I'm going to release my fall schedule next week, and I think you guys are going to really like where I'm going. I'm going to be doing some more state travel into next year. I'm going to be very busy. The name of the publishing company is called 10th House Publishers. If you type in 10th House Publisher, it will come up on Bing. And you can see some of the things that we've been involved with already. And if you are interested in having your thoughts, your journey published, we call it From Pen to Purpose, because it's about sharing that story. But just having a Gen X or a Gen Zer really have the perspective of personal accountability, that is where we're going, guys. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. I love that a few of you just went to the website. I just got notification. I love it. I love it. All right, guys, listen, I'm going to wrap up. Hard taps to everybody. Thank you so much for joining in. Hope you guys enjoy this. Please share it with people. Please let them know, hey, this crazy guy that said that Trump's going to leave didn't leave. And then it's like, oh, but here's why. Here's where it's going. He's busy buying Epstein's plane. Guys, there's always facts there, right? Magical Mermaid, let's talk. This might be the perfect place for you to do it. All right, guys. Hard tap across the board. I'm going to see you guys soon. And don't forget to vote or don't. It's your choice. It's your accountability. Keep going.